Kumbaya.
All right.
Uspara.
I was just about to start. Dang it. All right. Welcome to MetroStar's Andy Bojangles Gill. All right. Go again. Take 3. Hi, I'm Stephanie Holman, an Army veteran who served in the Medical Service Corps. These days, I work as a technical recruiter in the cleared space here at MetroStar. We know how important these conversations are to the military community, and we're honored to provide a platform for sharing insights, making connections, and building resources for transitioning service members. This is Civvies, a podcast by MetroStar. Welcome to MetroStar's Civvies Podcast, where we are talking about military veteran transition. It's our mission to make your transition just a little bit better by sharing the stories of others that have gone before you, like my guest, Andy Gill, who actually knows both sides of the house as an Air Force veteran, active duty, and reservist. And he's also a technical recruiter here at MetroStar. So we are going to get into that. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Steph. Glad to be here.
So to start, give us a little bit of background on your military experience, what you did in the Air Force, how long you served.
Yeah, so all in all, 24 years in the Air Force. Joined when I was 17 years old. Honestly, I didn't plan for the military. Like, I wasn't one of those kids, like, growing up, always wearing fatigues and in the woods, shooting guns, and that wasn't my upbringing. Never really thought about the military until I met a good recruiter.
Nice.
Honestly.
Yeah.
And Paul Rupert, man, he was awesome. He painted the picture of what the Air Force could be really, really well. And a couple of my friends, he had talked to them, and they were like, "Hey, Andy, you got to come talk to this recruiter." So I came and talked to him. I ended up joining. They didn't. Mm-hmm. And the rest is history. So I spent 24 years in the Air Force total, 12 of which was active duty, mm-hmm. From 2000 to 2012. And then in 2012, I stepped out of active duty, transferred directly into the reserves. And I was there for another 12 years, mm-hmm. And retired just this past August.
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. It feels good. All in all, I did avionics. I worked a lot of my career in avionics, both mm-hmm. reserve and active duty, heavy aircraft. So defensive avionics initially, and then transferred into more of an integrated avionics specialist, which, covers communication, navigation systems, all on heavy aircraft.
Right.
So B-1 bombers, C-17, C-130, stuff like that. And then I did a chunk of my active duty time in the recruiting service. Mm-hmm. So I did a number of years in recruiting and was successful and really, really enjoyed that. So when I got out of active duty, I didn't go right into recruiting. I stepped into owning my own business.
Very cool. Which
is very translatable,
right,
with recruiting skill set. A lot of marketing, a lot of, drumming up your own business and talking to people. There's a sales aspect to both recruiting and owning your own business, of course. So I did that for about 7 years. And then just through life, I decided to come back into recruiting, mm-hmm. came back into recruiting about 10 years ago. And I've been in recruiting ever since. So.
Very cool. And what our audience does not know is that you actually got me into recruiting. So I'm very grateful for what happened 10 years ago. Anytime I hear a veteran talk about their years of service, especially when it's at or over the 20-year mark, I have to ask, did it go fast? I mean, is it like, boom, and all of a sudden you're at 20 years, parts of it feel really slow? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes and no is the answer. Mm-hmm. I mean, if I look back and think I was in the Air Force for 24 years, I'm like, there's no way.
Right.
There's no way it was 24 years. It feels like yesterday. But then when I think about everything that I did in that span of 24 years, mm-hmm. it does feel like a long time, multiple deployments and multiple AFSCs and special duty assignments and really cool trips to parts of the world that I never would have been to,
right?
If it hadn't been for the Air Force, all of that in the totality of that sinking in, it feels like a long time. Mm-hmm. But at the same regard, it was a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad that it's over, but like not,
I can relate to that with it going by fast. And I'm kind of smirking because here at MetroStar, a lot of folks are like, wait, how old are you? So you like constantly get carded, not for alcohol, but people are doing the math and like, wait a minute.
24 years.
Yeah.
Like,
you've lived many lives, man. Andy, you're a bit of a unique guest because you were active duty and then went into the reserves. Usually on the Civvies Podcast, we've had folks that all of their time has been active duty. Tell me about the transition from active duty to the reserves.
Yes. So about my 8 or 9 year mark, you got to realize like I was in pre 9/11, just before 9/11. I joined in August of 2000. So about a year before 9/11, all the way through, the early days of post 9/11 life. And then the ops tempo, the way it was during that decade. So around my 8 or 9 year mark, I just knew like I had 2 kids at that time. And I knew I wanted to have more kids. My wife was an Air Force brat herself. That's all she's ever known. But we both kind of came to the conclusion that like for our life and for what we wanted to do with our life and our family, it was time. So I knew I wanted to get out. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I knew I was an entrepreneur. Like I knew I had that mindset. And so growing up, my dad owned a painting company.
I was just going to ask, where did the seeds get planted?
Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah.
He owned a residential painting company, very successful. And I didn't know how to paint a right. But seeing him and understanding just business minded decisions and being in recruiting, honestly, on active duty, I knew I could talk to people. I could, sell things, and have that personality to be successful. So I kind of just went for it. I had no clue what I was doing. I started an LLC when I was deployed in the Middle East in 2010. I was just online, started my LLC.
Straight Googling. Yeah.
Just Googled it. Like, oh yeah, it's that easy. Boop, 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 boop. There you go. I'm an LLC. And then started marketing it. And so when I got out of active duty, I had planned to just completely separate and just, go, all the way in with my business. And I did that. But in the process of transitioning out, just talking to people and, honestly doing the math, I was like, it would kind of be crazy for me to just walk away from this without trying the reserves and like maybe trying to finish out a career so I can have a pension. So
sure.
It was just a lot of talking to people and then it just made sense for me. And I loved the reserves. I deployed more in the reserves than I did active duty, which is ironic. But those of you who've been in the reserves, the ops tempo in reserves is sometimes just as or more heavy than active duty. So yeah, I stayed in and I just never looked back and finished out another 12 years and retired.
Yeah. Tell me about the emotions, if any. Everyone's journey is a little bit different. So I don't want to assume that it maybe was, negative or anything, but what emotions were you feeling when you went active duty to reserves? I'm just listening to your story and I've gathered at the time you're the sole income earner, right? You've got 2 small kids. That's a lot of pressure, real pressure. You have people depending on you. So would you say that you felt a fair amount of pressure moving into the reserves?
Yes. And it wasn't so much moving into the reserves. It was just that whole transition period. Everything was changing. I went from, over a decade being in the military, getting a paycheck on the 1st and 15th and knowing, if I make this rank, then my salary goes up this amount so I can count on that money,
right?
To not having that paycheck, and starting a business. And so there was a lot of unknowns. And I shared this on another podcast, episode, but during that first year, I actually, while it was successful, like while I was seeing success, it wasn't fast enough. And,
right.
I got to a point where we couldn't pay our mortgage. We were kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel of our savings and I ended up having to call my reserve unit and ask them for orders and say, hey, do y'all have any orders that you can put me on? And luckily they did.
Right.
So testament to the options that you can have in the reserves, especially after active duty, after so much time in active duty. You're trained, you're qualified, you're seen as an expert, hopefully in your field. And so having that safety net it was a lifesaver for me. Like we would have lost our home. Well, I don't know. I probably would have figured out something, but it was the answer in the moment for me to pay my mortgage. And so I got on 6-month orders. I still was in the grind of making my business, work and working that on the side. So for a period of time, I had 2 full-time jobs essentially. But it gave me that safety net to make it through that season. So lots of emotions. I mean, your original question was about emotions. I mean, I went through, especially during those first few years, seasons of like failure, like feeling like a failure. When, as a man, at least the way I'm built, like if I, as the sole provider for my family, can't pay my mortgage, that's on me, And so I felt, a sense of responsibility, a sense of failure, sense of shame. And then also like just getting out and not having the day-to-day interaction with uniform members.
Right.
You lose a sense of like belonging.
And a little bit of identity, I would imagine.
Oh, 100%. 100%. It's a lot to just rip out of your life all at once. So, and same thing for if you don't go in the reserves, like if you transition, I imagine, from full-time service, whether it be 4, 6 years or 20 years, you're going from like 100 miles an hour to 0.
Right.
And then you're in a totally different environment. So it's frightening, it's exciting, it's scary, it's, all kinds of emotions. But
so talk to me about climbing out of those emotions, right? I have a visual in my head, literally, of just like clawing your way back up to a more kind of stable existence where you are able to pay, your mortgage. How did you work through those emotions?
Well, I have to credit my wife for a large portion of that. My wife's amazing. She's a rock. She's like, steadfast. She's constantly supports me. And honestly, through those times and all those emotions, she just continually, and she was a military brat too. So she understood the grind.
Sure.
She was a colonel's daughter. So, so really leaning on her. And that was my support system. I think that everyone has to find like who and what their support system is. It may not be a spouse. It may be friends. It may be, colleagues or whatever, but I mean, heck, it may be a therapist. Sometimes that's been the person that's gotten me through things in life, but find that support person to help you through those emotions. And my wife really did help me through that. And she was supportive during that 6 months of having those orders and still trying to grind on the business. I was working, my orders were for night shift on the flight line. So I was working from like 10 at night till about like 7, 8 in the morning, going home, sleeping for like 3-4 hours, getting up, going to do some sales calls, on Craigslist, sometimes trying to build business. Cause started with nothing. Like Craigslist was my marketing campaign for a while. I'm
just visually imagining like a raccoon driving home, living that raccoon life. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But it was something that we both sat down. We're like, this just has to happen. Like, and it sometimes it's like, that's the resiliency that I think is overlooked sometimes, with most military veterans is like, it sucks, and it's not just exclusive to military veterans, but military veterans are built in, to understand, like, I don't really want to do this,
right?
But I'm going to do it because it has to get done. I mean, that's part of basic training's mentality is to break everyone down, no matter if you come from money, this social status, this, class of people from this neighborhood or that neighborhood, like they break everyone down to nothing. You feel like nothing. And then you realize the only people you have is the people around you.
Right.
And then you rise up and you get through a lot of stuff you don't want to do. So that's, it was just a 6 month of mentality of like, I got to do this. So I'm going to do it.
So having gone through all of that, right, and climbing out on the other side, is there anything that you would have done differently, or were those lessons valuable to get you where you are today?
Yeah, I think I would have done things differently for sure. I think, anybody that goes through almost losing their house, would be crazy if they learned a lesson and didn't say they would do things differently.
Right.
But I also see the value in what I went through. I've made a lot of money in my life and I've made a little amount of money in my life, as far as like in that current moment.
Sure.
It doesn't really matter. It doesn't bring me any like sense of like accomplishment or joy. And so going through that season of like not depending on money and depending on like just your grit, really, was all I had. And that's all I had to lean in on. But to your question, I talked to a lot of people that want to own their own business.
Sure.
And between 2011, when I was starting to look into it, 2012, when I transitioned out, till now, like the veteran services for like small business owners, is way more, accessible. And there's a lot more information out about that.
Right.
Loans and just grants and services that you can get for free, just being a veteran small business owner. I didn't tap into any of that stuff because I didn't know about it.
Right.
I had no clue about all this stuff.
That it was out there.
So I would have done that differently. I would have like educated myself better, for owning a business as a veteran and really taken advantage of those.
And reached out. Obviously, at the beginning we introed you and I know you're a technical recruiter, right? So you know about a lot of organizations out there like SkillBridge. Is there one that comes to mind that is just right on the money that you're like, this is the number one organization that I would recommend to a transitioning service member?
I don't know if this is the answer that you were expecting, but no. There are a lot of organizations out there that are good. Like SkillBridge is good. You have partner programs like Hiring Our Heroes that are very well known that help out with SkillBridge. There's other smaller entities that offer more niche kind of, mentorship, like 4Block is one, that I'm familiar with, where it's more of like, from what I understand it to be like more of a one-on-one, like coaching mentor kind of thing. So the reason I say no is there's good organizations out there that are well-known and there's good organizations out there that are smaller. Boots to Books is another one.
Sure. I've heard that one.
There's so many out there and you just have to kind of do the work, just like finding a job, like finding the resources that help you, and going to va.gov really does help. And this isn't a plug for va.gov, but like there's good information there and it at least gets you started.
Right.
This is what you want to do. These are the resources that are there. And I would encourage folks, number one, if you're getting out, like get in touch with your VA, get enrolled in VA healthcare, even if you think you're not going to use it. Just get enrolled, go there. The one that I'm a part of is out in St. Cloud, Minnesota. It's amazing. It's like this huge campus. And there's so many resources out there. So, just do your research and find what works for you. Cause like if you want to become a teacher or if you want to become, a software engineer, your path to that is going to be totally different, but there's resources for each.
Right.
There's resources for so many paths. So just understanding that and doing your work. Don't just like ride on somebody else's experience.
And it sounds like there's a level of self-awareness that's needed to really figure out like, what does Andy want to do? Do you want to be a teacher? Do you want to go into tech? What specifically do you want to do? And then kind of zero in on those organizations that might be able to help.
Yeah. And I think that's some veterans, I wouldn't say failure, but challenge that they have to overcome is whatever it is not going to fall in your lap.
Right.
It's not going to. That's not how life works.
Right. So,
whatever you think that you want to do, you have to go out and put the work in and put the hours in. That's why, it's so important to, take the time at the end of your military career that your command gives you to research and I mean, it's a full-time job, like understanding how you're going to step out of the military. If it doesn't feel like a full-time job, you either like have your golden path already set in motion or you're going to miss out on some opportunities. So put the work in.
Yeah. And that's what I think is so valuable about those different points of failure in life, if you're able to get through it, I think you're able to get through anything, because it is that grit, like you were saying, and determination.
Yep.
Everything's figureoutable. I don't know if that's a word, but it should be. Well, you can figure it out.
Exactly. Like it's like my whole, like almost, losing my house. Like if I didn't go through that, like other problem situations would feel so much worse. But like now I have that to lean on. And it's like, well, it's kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But at least my mortgage is paid.
Right. And you've got some perspective.
Right.
That's definitely. So I want to talk about your transition into recruiting, but specifically cleared technical recruiting. Tell us a little bit about that.
Like how I got into it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So after I owned the business for about 7 years and I decided to step back into recruiting, I got a job just as an agency recruiter at a staffing agency. It was an engineering technical recruiter role. They saw on my resume that I was an avionics technician, that I owned my own business, and I was a recruiter in the Air Force a few years ago. And they were like, "Man, let's get this guy a shot." So I started with this company called Intigi Engineering, and did that for a couple years, and it was really fun. So they had a lot of business in like industrial engineering and stuff, but they didn't have a lot of business. At least my office didn't have a lot of business in like government work. And so I started poking around, even though it wasn't my job to be an account manager. I started poking around with like Boeing and SpaceX. I got us into SpaceX on the early days when they were actually building the launch pads down in Florida. Like I got in and got a portion of the contract to hire the welders that welded the launch pad, tower.
Who knew?
For SpaceX. Yeah. And so I started getting into those and like just small little portions of accounts, but I really liked it. And then I was cleared because I was in the reserves, still held my secret clearance at least. And so I kept that on my resume and started adding like this work that I was doing to get into more aerospace, type of work. Added that to my resume. And then one thing led to another where I went deeper and deeper into technical recruiting. Got a job at like a software company that was really focused on hiring veterans and did that for a number of years. So that's where I really learned and understood like software development and DevOps and all the world of technical recruiting within software. And then I honestly took a shot at going to AWS and their cleared ADC recruiting team. There was an opening and it was remote. I live out in Minnesota and I threw my name in the hat. I had applied to AWS like 5 or 6 times and had interviews. It's hard to get in there. But they saw my work with getting into aerospace at Intigi and my clearance and all of that. And they gave me a shot, and that's where I met you.
And so did you go through a pathway program?
No.
You straight up applied?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And that's relevant because having us both worked at AWS, we've seen the number of applications, obviously, that come in. So it's impressive that you were able to get in. But I also like that you pointed out you applied multiple times.
Oh, yeah.
And, not everyone makes it in on the first round. Yeah.
And it was, people ask me, why was AWS such a goal of yours? Like, was it because you wanted to work for Jeff Bezos? Like, no.
Right.
No, it wasn't that. It wasn't like necessarily the title. I just knew that a big company like that would give me the opportunity to do different things. And so I really had it as a goal of mine to get into Google or Amazon or AWS or, one of the big companies.
Right.
And I did it, and I'm glad I did it.
Right.
I like smaller companies better, but I'm glad I did it.
Yeah. And for our listeners who don't know our backstory, I'll mention it real quick. So I'm also a military veteran and went through a pathway program. You actually interviewed me, right? And you brought me onto the team. And I remember, and I don't know if you remember this, but one of our first meetings, you emphasized just how unique of an opportunity this was. And you were very realistic about what I was up against, right? Being a former educator, learning tech. And you said, learn as much as you can and run as hard as you can.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciated that, right? Because you gave me that extra level of importance and to really stay in the moment every day, right? And I hope veterans walk away with like, just be present, learn as much as you can from the people around you. So, okay, got to get into very specific questions for our audience. And some of these actually came from our listeners. In the cleared space, what are some of the most common roles that veterans with a security clearance can go into?
Cybersecurity. You got a lot of, human intelligence folks and cyber security folks coming out of the military. That's like the easy button, is cybersecurity. And you'll hear I think the problem that we're seeing in technical recruiting, even in the cleared space right now, especially hiring out of the veteran population, is it's very easy to find cybersecurity engineers, analysts, folks that are more like ISO, ISI type of background. It's easy because like for years, people have been gravitating into that field. The challenge and why this is important for listeners to hear is like, if you want a career field that you're not going to be like overrun by a bunch of other people in the market, is the cleared software, software engineering, DevSecOps folks, more of those niche type of, hands to keyboard developer type of roles. So I'm not like dissing going into cybersecurity, because another question that we commonly get from job seekers in the clear space is like, or they were cleared and want to get back into clear. How do I get in? Like all these roles say, CI poly required, TSSCI required, active clearance, and you got those people that are like, I want to get into this space, or I've been in this space and I've lost my adjudication of my clearance. How do I get back in? Well, you get in by, maybe doing something like cybersecurity. Transitioning veterans can easily step into that. Get your foot in the door with something maybe you don't want to do for the rest of your life. Like it gets your foot in the door with a company. Sometimes you go to like a company like MetroStar, go on the job page and find the jobs that don't require clearances that maybe you minimally qualify for. Maybe it's like some position that you really don't want to do, but it gets your foot in the door with a company that can clear you, and then work from within, because a good company is always going to hire from within first.
So let's get really specific here. I love giving folks guidance, real guidance, so they can take right this minute. They can pause this, look it up. What specific keywords would be on a job description that would tell someone, oh, sponsorship is available for a clearance?
Ability to obtain.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you just do like an X-ray search of like, jobs through Google, that say have the words in parentheses, ability to obtain. That's a very common phrase in a requirement for a role that says ability to obtain a public trust clearance or ability to obtain a secret clearance. You're not really like, a lot of times you're not going to find a ton that say like ability to claim to obtain a CI poly.
Sure.
You'll find them, but they're few and far between. But that's why I say like go in, get some ability to obtain role.
Right.
It might be IT help desk and you might be a cybersecurity analyst, but you did IT help desk in the Army. Go do it.
For someone that does not have a technical background, but has a security clearance, is a security clearance enough?
Sometimes, it all depends on, because at the end of the day, as good of a recruiter that you can find, they can't get you a job you don't qualify for.
Right.
Right. So, understanding what your skill set is, and going after, those types of roles, like business analyst roles, like there's a lot of different pathways you can get into business analyst. And all like government contracts usually need like business analyst type. And then from business analyst, you're understanding customer requirements. You're getting in and understanding the technical solution that you're delivering for your customer. You're analyzing financials, all types of skill sets that you can obtain within a career field like that then you can be like, oh, I really like FinOps, cloud financial operations, which is, by the way, a very big growing field in the cleared space. So if you want to get into cleared space, like FinOps is going to be huge, especially from like an efficiency and finance portion, perspective. I can't remember what I was saying, but yeah, like get into those roles that allow you to do other things and then branch off into others. Any type of analyst role, you know, are usually easier to get into. And then you can go different directions from that.
So break this down for me. Back to job descriptions. What is the difference between must-haves and nice-to-haves?
Yeah. Well, it's exactly the way it sounds. So some companies get fancy with how they say must-haves and nice-to-haves. You know, they'll say like, you will succeed in this role if you have these qualifications. Like that's a must-have, but usually they're going to list a block of requirements and it's going to be obvious that they're required. Those are kind of non-negotiables,
right?
You know, there's rare circumstances where like, you know, so let me back up here. So those are the requirements that you have to have. So if you do not have all those qualifications, technically you're not qualified for the role. Nice to haves are like those things that are going to make you edge above the next person, or they also, like, the big topic of discussion right now is pay transparency. Like,
sure,
everything is going public. Like, you know, you're going to know the salary range for a role. Well, if you're coming out of the military and you've got, you know, help desk experience and you're going for a help desk 3 role, senior help desk 3 role on the outside, and they're looking for, you know, 7 years of experience and you've got like 4, and, you know, those nice to haves are things that are going to like kind of help rack and stack like the most qualified person. And it's also going to play into like, if you've got all the minimal qualifications from the requirements and you're hitting all of the nice to haves, like you're positioned to be at the top of that pay range.
Sure.
But if you just have the minimum qualifications and you're missing out on a lot of those must haves, you may still qualify for the role, but don't ask for the top of that pay range because you're not going to get it, you know? So pay penetration and pay transparency go hand in hand.
Right.
So, and the other thing I'll say about that is if you don't meet all of the must-have qualifications, you'll hear a lot of people say, don't let that hold you back from applying. And then you have to ask yourself, well, Andy, you just told me that, you know, if I don't have those, then I'm not going to be qualified for the role. Well, that is true. Right. But sometimes putting your name in the hat and the recruiter seeing like, oh, they're almost there.
Right.
Well, guess what? Recruiters often are not taking the title recruiter anymore. We're taking the title talent advisor. So I have a direct line to that hiring team. And I'm saying Stephanie Holman does not meet this qualification because she doesn't have, you know, some single certification, and maybe she's a year shy of the 7 years required.
Sure.
But Stephanie has all these other qualifications. She's great. I talked to her on the phone. She's going to be great as a MetroStar employee. Hey, Mr. Hiring Manager, Mrs. Hiring Manager, do you have the ability to hire in a different position, maybe at an intermediate level?
There you go.
know, and a lot of times the answer is yes. Like they're not so hinged on that senior title, but that's just how they've built that requisition. Right. That requirement. And maybe they have the flexibility. Sometimes they don't, but sometimes they have the flexibility to say, you know what, Andy, yeah, I trust you as a recruiter and you're telling me that Stephanie is good for this role. Let's create an intermediate position. And you know, we already know she qualifies for it. Let's open it up to the public and obviously give everyone a shot at that opportunity. But Stephanie her name's already known, you know? So that's why we say like, still apply. If you're close, still apply.
Right.
You know,
and a recruiter, you're reminding me of this, can be your biggest advocate because you're having that conversation, right? If you have a good relationship with your hiring manager, you're coming to the table and saying, okay, I know we're missing this piece, right? But I have all these other things, all these other characteristics. Speaking about that, without name dropping the program, we've obviously previously worked together. There was a training program that you were heading that would take someone with minimal experience and a clearance and train them up to be an analyst. Specific to that program, what characteristics and qualities would the hiring team look for in someone to say, you know what, let's go ahead and bet on this person and put them in the training?
Yeah. Concrete evidence that they are self-motivated and have a drive to succeed. And what I mean by that is like, we would find people in the program that Stephanie's referring to. I won't mention it by name, but it was a program that was individuals had to have a polygraph clearance. So we were hiring a lot out of the military, obviously. But they didn't have to have like this certain level of like Linux computing experience or, systems engineering. We would build them into that. And so what we would look for is like, hey, a big one was if you have a home lab, right? Like as a technical recruiter, if you're especially junior in your technical role and you're talking to a good technical recruiter and you mention you have a home lab, that technical recruiter is be like, oh, tell me more. Please tell me more. What did you build?
Right.
Like, what systems, like what does it do? And just that shows me that I can advocate for you in a junior upskilling program, like you mentioned, to that team and say, this person, maybe they went out and they got some CompTIA certification, or they got, AWS practitioner or associate, some kind of like certification that they put themselves into and obtain themselves, and they're building this home lab and they're doing this little tinkering on the side,
right.
Or they built websites, for mom and pop shops, these are the skills that they learned during that. They know HTML, CSS, they did a little bit of dabbling in React, they're not an expert in any of this stuff,
right.
But they've done all this stuff on their own. And that's what we would look for, the ability to succeed if the tools are given to you. And then we would put them in that program that was like 16 months or so of upskilling. So
I love that you touched on just having that self-motivation and then tinkering, right? Fun word. Having the courage to just try, right? It's not going to work 100% the first time. What are the top 2 or 3 mistakes that you see veterans make when they're applying to positions in the cleared space? And one you've already kind of touched on with looking at the specific clearance requirement in the job description.
Yeah. The clearance requirement in the job description, you're going to get auto rejected out because we get so many applicants. That's another kind of thing that the applicant community doesn't understand. Like, oh, I applied and nobody called me. It's like, we got like thousands of applicants, a day sometimes, not on highly cleared roles. But I would say the mistake that I see people making, they don't know they're making it. It is finding a job that you're really qualified for, applying, and then just hoping you're going to get a call. So as an applicant, you need to seek out the recruiter on a job that you really, really want. Not like just one that you're like, well, that would kind of be cool. Like maybe I would get a call on that. I might be interested in it.
Right.
Not necessarily those types of jobs, but if you see a job, you're like, I want to work there. Like I love MetroStar. Like they've got their own podcast.
Right.
I want to do everything I can to get there. I'm going to apply and then I'm just going to sit on my chair and like wait around. No, you can do your own sleuthing, find like who the recruiting team is. And a lot of recruiters don't like this, but like every good recruiter is going to say, like, if somebody applies to a job, they're qualified, and then they seek me out on LinkedIn or whatever platform that you're, clearancejobs.com, whatever platform they're using. And they say, hey, Stephanie, I applied to this role. Here's my resume. 100%. I'm really motivated to get a conversation with you.
Yep.
I'm going to look into that before any other applicant. And if they're qualified, I'm going to talk to them. It happened yesterday. There was a girl, I won't name her by name, but we're recruiting out of Quantico right now for some work that's upcoming in 2026. And she's like a random like Marine Corps logistics commander. Cool. And she's had a hard time finding a job after getting out of the military. And she's like, hey, a friend of mine told me about MetroStar. I don't know if you have any roles in my area, but I saw this logistics SME role. Here's my resume. She actually didn't even apply to it. She just sent me her resume on LinkedIn. She said, I saw this role. I live in Virginia Beach and like would be open to, different locations. Like, do you think I have a shot? She did that. I happened to be on the recruiting team that's recruiting after that. So I immediately knew, I was like, oh, this resume is perfect, And so I sent it over to the hiring manager. I was like, she hasn't even applied yet. He's like, get her on the phone like tomorrow.
Yeah.
So like doing that work to reach out to the recruiting team. And if you don't know if that person's the recruiter, like she didn't, I'm going to take the time to, if she's qualified and does that work, I'm going to try to find the recruiter that's responsible. But you can also ask and you say, I don't know if you're the recruiter for this, but I know you're a recruiter at MetroStar.
Right.
Can you tell me who the recruiter is on requisition number 5876?
Right. Right.
It's easy to do that. And then I can just look it up and think. You have to do that work and make it a personal effort to to really go after those roles you want.
So it sounds like the message that you received was very direct, right? And number one, I have taken action, right? I know about your company, jazzed up about it. I took action. I applied. Here's my resume. Here's some information. How do you feel about AI generated messages hitting your inbox that are 2 pages long? Tell us about it, Andy.
So I use AI generated messaging myself. However, I use it as a starting point. Recruiters are very savvy. We know when it's AI generated. You can tell. Like, let's be honest. Like, the world of ChatGPT has been around for long enough. You know when something is ChatGPT. So use AI to maybe understand how you should approach the conversation, but don't use AI to talk to somebody one-on-one, right? Like, if you want to use AI to create your LinkedIn heading,
sure,
100%. But if I'm reaching out to Stephanie about a role that she's working on, and I know she's working on it, and I want that role, and I want to tell Stephanie who I am, I may go to ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever tool you use and say, hey, Stephanie Holman, here's her LinkedIn, link. She's working on this role. This is my background. Here's my resume. Can you tell me an introduction to Stephanie that I could use that incorporates my background with the role that she's recruiting? And just get the information and then pull that out into a more personalized message. So use AI, but don't just click the little shiny button on the website and hit send.
Right. So there's a bit of tailoring.
Yeah.
I think for me, it just comes down to clearance level, location. What are you interested in? Right. Those 3 things.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good point too. Like, clear and concise, because technical recruiters in the cleared space, this isn't like being arrogant. We don't have the time to sit around and figure things out. Like, we have to move quickly in this business.
Right.
And so, you say like, you have 7 seconds for a recruiter to look at your resume. That's like the buzz thing to say.
It is.
As far as like messaging somebody, like, tell me why you're here. Like, tell me what role you're interested in and why you're qualified for it. Like, do the work for me. And that's not coming from a place of arrogance. It's coming from, this is your job.
Right.
And that you're pursuing, and tell me why I should stop doing what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
There's 1,000 other things, and stop and talk to you.
So what Andy's saying is, don't send him a message that just says, hi.
Or a message this long.
Or a message that long. We got to talk about tailoring your resume. Is it important to tailor your resume?
Yeah.
Tell me why.
Well, especially because the rapid adoption of AI within ATSs, applicant tracking systems. So this is the systems in the software and the web-based software that recruiters use to manage applicant flow and recruiting and interviewing and all that. So AI is coming out so fast that applicant tracking systems, providers, the companies that provide those systems, aren't even giving updates anymore. They're not like, hey, we're releasing our quarterly review, or quarterly update, or our monthly update. Here's the new features. They're coming out so fast that they're just showing up. And it is making our job easier. I wouldn't say easier. It's changing the landscape of our job. It's changing how we do it. And so making sure that your resume doesn't fluff what your experience is. Please don't do that, because you're going to make yourself look, pretty silly in a technical interview when you can't speak to what's on your resume, and it kind of makes us look bad too. But, be a good representation of what you've done, but make sure that, like, if there's a job that I know I'm qualified for, and if I was on the market, what I would be doing today is just like I said earlier, about communicating with the recruiter. I would take my resume, drop it into ChatGPT. I would take the job requisition that's posted, drop that into the same conversation, give the AI a persona of a hiring manager, or maybe an initial technical recruiter,
sure,
and say, how can I change my resume to match better with with what the requisition is asking for, without changing what I've done in my experience,
right?
And just make some tweaks. And people are like, well, you going to do that for every job you apply for? Kinda, yeah. If you're that strategic.
I mean, yes and no. I think my advice is if you're applying for an analyst role, right, within the same industry, look up 3 analyst roles at different companies. You're going to see themes across that. So you can tailor at a larger scale that applies to all.
Yeah.
I like what you said about, you using AI, specifically Chat GPT, to maybe put your resume in, compare it to a job opening. Not only to maybe make your resume a little bit better if you have the experience, right? But also to identify gaps and then be prepared to talk about those gaps. You might not have X, Y, and Z tools, but you might have A, B, and C that, relate. So, just good prep.
Yeah. And AI can help you do that. You can literally say, identify the gaps in my background on this requisition, and then see it right there and be like, oh man, I'm going to need to either, like you said, have this other skill set that speaks into that. Let me speak into that in my application,
right?
Or in my initial call. So absolutely.
Yeah. And that it also relates back to what you said earlier about, a recruiter can be your advocate with having that direct line of communication with the hiring manager to say, hey, talk to Andy. And he was very forthcoming and transparent about this specific gap. And here's how he's been at his home lab trying to upskill and fill that in.
So I'm going to flip the questions on you a little bit right here, because I respect the heck out of how you handle your relationships with your hiring managers. And I think it's valuable for job seekers, not to know like Stephanie's the greatest recruiter, but like a good recruiter, what are you doing in behind the scenes in the background when you find a good candidate that you've talked with and you're like, this person is MetroStar material? Like, what are the things that you're doing in the background that maybe an applicant has no clue that you're doing to advocate for them?
Assessing them behaviorally. Yeah. And we kind of already talked about it. Does this person have self-awareness, that internal motivation, and are they transparent? Right. It's one thing to get on to a screening and say, yep, I've used those tools. I have that experience. And it's a very different thing to get on a technical interview and say that, and then have a hiring manager scratch beneath the surface. Well, tell me how you've used that. Right. And that's where the train can leave the tracks. So it's having that honest conversation. And I think that can be overlooked, right? Because everybody wants to get on a call and have a fantastic call, and hopefully they come away as the top, applicant. But I generally think leading with transparency is one of the best things that you can do as an applicant. And then I also know if you don't fit this opening I have, okay, doesn't end here. Let's pivot you. Let's see where else we can find a fit for you.
And that's where I've seen you do so well with just to coin an old phrase, keeping your Rolodex up to date, like with who's on the market and oh, this didn't work out 6 months ago, but I know this person has this skill set for this new role. Like I've seen you do that countless times. And I think that's important. Like when you're talking about finding a recruiter that is your advocate, there's good recruiters and there's bad recruiters out there.
In every industry.
Every industry has, bad apples, but when you find somebody like you, Stephanie, and hold on to that and really salvage that relationship. Cause I know a lot of hiring managers, you could have Joe Schmo come and say this, I've got this person, can you reconsider them? And then you could have Stephanie say it to certain hiring managers that you've built that rapport and relationship with. And they will be like, oh, well, because Stephanie said so, I'm going to look at this a second time. And so that's that difference between a recruiter and a talent advisor. And really, you can't find that out until you really get to know that recruiter and see behind the scenes what they're doing. But just a tidbit of you find a good recruiter, hold on to that relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah. Keep the relationship. It might be a no, but just not right now. Right. All right, Andy, we covered a lot of good stuff about screenings, right? And what kind of happens in a recruiter screening. Now, I always say this, I'm not an engineer. I don't pretend to be, right? And I don't think our teammates here do either. So as a recruiter, if you're assessing someone that's an engineer based on the must-have requirements that we covered, how technical do you actually get on a screening call?
I would not stay at the surface level of your technical knowledge because a good recruiter, again, we keep saying that term, a good recruiter, but a good technical recruiter is looking for you to go beneath the surface. And the way I always like to coach people on how to answer initial technical questions from technical recruiters and during the full interview, mind you, is if somebody asks you a question about, I don't know, containerization,
my favorite
Kubernetes,
topic.
have you containerized? If they ask you that question and your answer is, yes, I use Kubernetes. I've been working in Kubernetes for 5 years and, Docker and, I would consider myself an expert. Okay.
What specifically have you done? Right.
Like, you can tell a technical recruiter that, because the way you should answer those questions is, I always tell people to tell the recruiter a story. Like, I've been doing Kubernetes for 5 years. We had this really hard program or project that, we had to containerize this, and this was the challenge. And we had these constraints, and, I worked with the team, and this is kind of how we navigated those constraints and those challenges. And we looked at it from a different perspective, and this is how we implemented, and it was a success, and we learned from that. That tells me way more about your behavior.
Right.
And not just that you've been doing Kubernetes for 5 years. So do that. The other thing that's being incorporating into technical recruiting in those initial recruiting screens is AI capture of data, and so it's starting to make its way out. And MetroStar is testing some software, and it's all like, permission granted, of course, when you're on those screens. But as AI unpacks more and more technology into the process, that type of answer, while it may go over the technical recruiter's head when you get into the weeds, it's still being captured in a way that a technical screener in that second round interview is going to 100% be able to understand it. And so making sure that you're going beneath the surface is super important.
I love that you mentioned storytelling, and it relates to what I recommend, which is the STAR method, right? It keeps your communication clear and concise. So with your storytelling, you're going over the situation, tasks that you took, the action, and the results, right? And then you can mix some behavioral stuff in there. It failed the second time we kept tweaking. It worked, on the third. And
the result is so important too. Like, sometimes the result isn't success. Like, sometimes the result is it didn't work, but let me tell you what I learned, about it.
Very, very fair point.
So don't be afraid of
it doesn't always have to be a good ending.
Yeah. Failures on paper, but we're not going to do that again.
Right. So after they get through the screening, they blaze through the interview, and they get hired, what would you recommend be the smartest thing for someone new to the clear space to do within the first 90 days?
Find smart people, especially coming out of the military. Your experience while your training is solid and your experience is very thorough. You need different exposure outside of that uniformed environment. And when you're stepping into those roles and you're in a good job with, in the technical realm that you want to be in, find the smartest person in the room, or at least people that are way smarter than you, and spend your time with them. Spend your time with people that are hardworking, know what they're talking about, and are willing to share. And there's people exist everywhere.
Right.
But find the smartest person in the room and try to learn as much as you can from them. Ask to be in meetings that you don't necessarily need to be into, but you can be. Ask to be on projects that you're way above your league, but even just from hey, Mr. Mentor, can I just tag along on this one little assignment so I can get this exposure? A lot of the opportunities you're going to get for exposure is because you're going to ask to be a part of it, not because somebody's be like, oh, we'll put the new guy in,
Right.
No, you got to do the training, and you got to do the work, and you got to show up at practice, and, and you may be on the bench for a lot of the cool plays, but, in that moment, coach, put me in, please, I can do this, those kinds of mentalities, and surrounding yourself with smart people.
Would you say that part of that process is also checking your ego at the door and just being humble?
So I've done a lot of hiring veterans in my years. And I always tell veterans that are transitioning or recently transitioned that one of the biggest things that you have to learn in your transition and during your transition is the amount of stuff you have to unlearn. So
that's a good one.
It's about your ego. It's about, well, this is the way we've always done it, especially for like career military guys and gals. It's how you carry yourself in group settings. If you were a command sergeant major, like most of the time that mentality and that kind of, I wouldn't say personality, but like the execution of the personality is not going to go over well with the customer.
Sure.
So check that at the door, figure out how you can still have that command presence and know what you're talking about and have that military groundedness that everyone loves, but you can also be versatile in your personality to where you're not like, making people stand up when you walk in the room.
Right. Right.
Like, oh, should I stand up? Like, So I think a guy that does that really well around here is Cedric George.
I knew you were going to say that. I could have said it at the same time.
2-star Air Force general.
Right.
He's tall as a beanstalk, just
you can see him coming.
Presence,
yeah.
And smart as heck. And if you just take him at face value, in a big conference room, you're like really intimidated by him. You see him in the hallway. He's like, "Oh, Andy, what's up?" He gives me a high five. And, he understands like he needs to be this way in this moment and not in another. And that's him checking his 2-star general ego at the door, and he'll tell you that too. Like, I'm not a 2-star general. I may have to exercise those skills in some situations.
Sure. Read the room. Right.
But I'm here just like you to do the work. He was carrying like a picture from like the 3rd floor to the 2nd floor, or the 1st floor yesterday, like up and down this, like 2-star general. Like, I know there's a lot of stereotypes in that statement, but like, he's not above like carrying stuff from one floor to another because furniture needs to be moved, Like,
Noted. I know one of my first moments here at MetroStar was seeing our CEO pick up trash, right? And not leave it there. And it just stuck with me because it spoke volumes about, it doesn't matter the position.
Most of us have like those stories of your favorite commander. And for me, it was the ones that like, they didn't break customs and courtesies and like, conflict of interest and like go out, drinking beers with you on a Friday night, but like they'd be there on FOD walks and they'd walk FOD walks. They wouldn't sit in their truck at the end of the FOD walk. They'd be there doing it with you. They'll be there on cleanup days. They'll be there on adopt a highway days. It's those leaders that, that you want to work for. And we had those commanders that weren't like that. And you're like, place sucks.
Right.
You know? So yeah, I've said before, senior leadership here at MetroStars, it's a family you want to work for because of that. And everything trickles down from leadership, good and bad. So.
And at every level, at every title, we can all work on our interpersonal skills.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, we got to move on to recruiter myth busters. True or false? If a recruiter doesn't call you back immediately, they're not interested.
False.
Why?
Well, I think just human nature is to take things like that personal, but I mean, really, a lot of good recruiting, there's process built into it, right? And so we might have just opened up the requisition and we're gathering applicants and also sourcing, and we're getting a good candidate pool pushed forward. We can't just like, here's the first person in line, they're qualified, like, let's make our decision. You know, there's actually OFCCP compliance that builds into that process, like, considering all parties and the rec being open for long enough and all of that stuff. So no, it's just you're in the process. Now ghosting happens. I will fully admit, like even the best recruiter drops a ball every now and then and loses communication. So, what I would say is like, if you feel like you're not getting the response, just, shake the bushes a little bit, hey, Andy, hey, Steph, I did an initial screening last Tuesday, just checking in on things. How are things going? Sometimes that's all it takes, you know? And I'm like, oh yeah, dang, I totally forgot to talk to hiring manager about this person. Let me go do that real quick. I've been guilty of that. So shake the bushes a little bit, be polite, but don't be that guy or that gal.
Sure.
It's like, you're just like one of the other recruiters, you know, you don't care about people. And it's like, well, okay.
Right.
Moving on.
Okay. So what I heard is you are a fan of the follow-up.
Yes.
You welcome a follow-up.
Welcome a respectful follow-up.
Right. But if there's no response to the follow-up, no answer might be the answer.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The reality is, you know, we can't have personal touches with every single applicant. There's just not enough hours in the day to do that.
Sure.
So you might get an automated rejection, you know, a week later. That's just part of the process.
Understood. Who gave you my notes? You touched on this earlier. True or false? You have to meet every single qualification listed on the job posting.
To apply, no. To get an offer on that requisition, technically, yes. But like I said, we recruit for more than just that position. So applying to that position, getting your name across someone's desk sometimes is all it takes. So still apply. If it's, you know, if you're way off on the qualifications, you know, there's no way you're going to fill that role, but there might be other opportunities.
Sure.
You know,
True or false? If you don't have a degree, you cannot get a clearance job.
very false. Very false. You know, it breaks down into LCAT categories and, you know, how the proposal and the contract was written by the government. Some do require it, some do not. You just have to, you know, kind of weed through the ones that require it. And most too, when you're reading that, like requires a master's degree or requires a bachelor's degree, like keep reading. Because a lot of times there's this funny little clause at the end of that line. It says, or relevant experience in lieu of degree, or some way, shape, or form. A lot of us read that first part and be like, dang it, that's another company that's just focused on degrees. No, that's usually bound by government requirement. But a lot of times there's that back end of that. And some people just read that first thing and be like, well, I'm not applying there. And they miss it completely because like you have 15 years of experience in, you know, data engineering, you know, with no degree, you're going to qualify for that role.
Right. Yeah. So look for the and or is what I'm hearing. True or false? Your military experience alone is enough to land you a clear job. No networking needed.
No, false. Yeah, false. I mean, like I said earlier, things don't just fall in your lap. You gotta do that work. You gotta do that networking. I mean, once in a blue moon, somebody that might have a story where they're like, that was the first job I applied for and it was the perfect job. I stayed there for 20 more years, you know. That don't count on that happening. Like you do your work, put in the grind to get the job that gives you the opportunity to further your career, and work hard at it. Okay.
This next one, I'm going to sit up a little bit straighter
because
this is a hot one. I know. Adjust the mics. As you know, we periodically pulse our audience for questions, and this one came from the audience. True or false? Recruiters only care about filling positions. They don't actually care about candidates.
Incredibly false for a good recruiter. You know, there's bad apples everywhere. I'm sure there's a recruiter out there that would happily carry that title of the person that doesn't care about the person, just cares about the numbers. But a good recruiter, a good recruiting team. Listen, like we don't do this job because it's easy. A lot of people think, I've heard this before. Like you're just a recruiter, you know, like if people almost say it like, you know, not like they're trying to be mean or like, oh, you're just a recruiter, you know, let's wait till they get, you know, further assessed, you know, like, listen, people, I've been doing this for so long and like, I know this industry so well. Like I know what my hiring manager's like, you know, and a lot of them, I don't even have to like ask for permission to put somebody on their calendar. You know, I'm just like, yeah, this person's, you know, so-and-so is going to really want to talk to this person. So we don't do this job because it's easy. But we do this job because we really like the human aspect of it. And I say we, because like, I'm confident that me and you sit in this room. Like, that's why we do this job.
We're aligned. Right.
Those phone calls that listen, like 3 months ago or so, I got this guy a job. He lost his government position. And he'd been looking for a few weeks and he was very, very stressed about it. Small kids at home. I extended an offer to him on the phone. I was not expecting this. So it caught me off guard. He broke down in tears, like sobbing. I was over the phone, so I couldn't see it, but probably that ugly cry, you know, because there was so much emotions built up in just hearing those words, we're extending an offer to you. He didn't know numbers. He didn't know the timing. He didn't know the start date. He didn't know details of why they chose him. It was just like, you're getting a contingent offer. Boom, emotional, like dam just broke. So when you have stories like that, like I like logged off for the day. I was like, I'm going to end on that note. Go upstairs. I talked to my wife. I was like, this is why I do this job. Like,
yeah.
Those stories of like, just you get in, you're a piece in that person's story of getting to that next phase of their life. And sometimes giving them a great salary increase, or maybe it's not salary, but it's just an opportunity to work in a space or on a mission that they're very passionate about. And that's why I do that. And so it's all about the people,
right?
At the end of the day.
And I love that you took the time to like, well, I'm going to log off and there, and then kind of decompress with talking it through with your wife.
Can't hold on to those, because what's my line? I always say, don't stay high in the highs or low in the lows.
Right. It's definitely a ride.
It's up and down.
And just to be real here, I mean, I've cried with candidates. I've teared up with them when it's, I
teared up on when that guy was crying.
Yeah, they're having that moment of like, thank you. We got there. It's a human response to react to that. Just for fun, if you could tell transitioning Andy anything, what would it be? Don't
grow that mustache without the beard. No, seriously.
I support that.
What can I tell transitioning Andy that would help him? Your first step into civilian life is not your end all be all. So when it doesn't work out perfectly, keep going and try something new. I think a lot of veterans feel like failures when they come out and it doesn't work out. Their first position isn't what they expected, or maybe they weren't successful at it. I've had that. I've had people come into recruiting from transitioning from the military that it's not that they couldn't cut it. It just wasn't the right flavor of recruiting sometimes. I mean, it's a different flavor of recruiting that they'll find their passion in, or maybe it's not recruiting, So it's just, that initial experience of what civilian life is like in an employment standpoint. You can't put like all of your chickens in that basket of like, if it doesn't work out, I'm a complete failure.
Right.
No, just try something new, change it up a little bit, go for something different, go for something completely different. I did the small business painting company and then was very successful after 7 years, making a lot of money. And I was like, I'm just not satisfied anymore.
Right.
I'm going to go back in recruiting.
Right.
Flip the switch. My wife is used to me going like, we're going to take a right turn and like do this crazy thing, but that's what's kept me going.
So now I have a follow on, because you say such insightful, good things that resonate. What do you say to that service member that has just transitioned out? They thought they were going to love the position that they went into, right? And they feel held to staying because of their work ethic in the military.
Yeah, this is a hard one because most veterans, they feel like if they make a move too quickly, that's saying that they're not loyal. And loyalty in the military is above all. Your integrity, your loyalty, your commitment is, it's in the core values of every military branch in some way, shape, or form. It's very hard for a lot of veterans to understand that, number one, they have a choice. They're used to, not that they don't have choices in life, but like what they do and where they go to work and who they report to, they have zero choice.
Right.
You get orders and they're called orders for a reason.
You go.
So you live a life like that. And then you go into a world where like you, in some way, shape, or form, you chose that role and then it's not what you like, or maybe your manager, you got a manager from hell and it's just a nightmare and you dread going to work every day. But if I leave, I haven't been here a year. Like, what does that say about my credibility? What does that say about my loyalty? What does that say about my honor and my integrity?
Right.
I said I was going to commit to this. Like, I need to stay. No, you don't. Like, that's one of those unlearning things that they have to unlearn. Now, if you job hop every 6 months, that's going to catch up to you, on your job searching. But if it is, at the end of the day, like, find passion and find enjoyment in something other than your job, because your job is going to disappoint you. And if you find that your job is completely disappointing, whether it be just what you're doing or who you're working with or the environment is toxic, make a move. Like, do yourself a favor and move on to the next thing. Don't be stuck with that. So that's what I would say is that's one of those unlearning things that you have to be cognizant of going into the job market. You have a choice.
You have a choice.
Yeah.
And sometimes that choice is for the first time in your adult life, especially for someone like yourself that joined at 17 and then stayed for over 20 years.
And I had like, maybe 10 or 12 of those years where before I, started interviewing for jobs in the reserves. But like you talk about somebody that joined like me when I was 17, we had to literally be signed into the military by our parents because we weren't an adult.
Right.
It was actually an emancipation paperwork, basically. That's what it is. Like if you're 17, you join the military, you have to get your parents to emancipate you, essentially saying he can make his own decision to leave the house.
Right.
You have somebody like that spends 23, 25 years in the military. All of a sudden, you have a 45-year-old man or woman never interviewed for a job in their adult life, never had a choice of where they're going to work, and really was bound by that military mindset. It's hard to say, hold the phone. I don't want to be here. I'm leaving.
Right.
But they can do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Andy Gill, thank you so much for joining us on MetroStar's Civvies Podcast. I want you to leave us on a high note. What do you want folks to know about the cleared space? Do we need them?
Yes. Like drastically. We need you in technical fields. We need you to understand AI. We need you to understand the rapid modernization of technology within both the Department of Defense and national security customers. The direction of our country and direction of technology is fast. And we need people that are going to get on board with rapid learning and people that are ready to continue contributing to the overall mission of national security. So yes, we need you.
Love it. You heard it here first from Andy Gill. Andy, where can our viewers find you? You mentioned LinkedIn.
Yeah, so I'm weird. I don't have any social media except for LinkedIn.
Okay.
Personal preference years ago. But LinkedIn, you will find me there. I don't have 50,000 connections like somebody in the room. But I'm active on LinkedIn for sure. And so they can find me. I think it's like Andy Gill 33 is my handle, but you can just search me, Andy Gill.
Right.
There'll be some reference to like me having my first job in Chick-fil-A and like Time Magazine Person of the Year.
We'll have to get into that on the next episode, right? Dig into this Chick-fil-A past life that you had. Thanks again for joining us, Andy.
Yes, thank you.